still gonna be online or is it?
No, he has an appointment he forgot about. I know. He told me this morning he'd be online and now he says he will not.
I have to be commissioner and the lawyer. Whatever.
Yeah, whenever.
What's the stipend for that?
I have an extra half a sandwich downstairs.
Nice.
He said he's waiting. I don't see him.
Did you get the right link?
I sent it to him and everyone at the same time. Want to reschedule the link? Sure. Nature space. Take it away.
Matt, are you gonna give us some karaoke for entertainment?
Not me. Bass player.
We can just sit there and thump, thump.
That's about it. My 3 chords.
But you're in the band. It's really important.
Say it again?
I was wondering, like, how does someone get into bass? Is they try the guitar and you really couldn't get it? So
Well, it's like we already had a guitar player and a drummer. And my buddy said, hey, you need to learn to play bass. Okay.
Oh, okay. Just that easy.
Yeah, he said, here's you.
Because it's already going.
When did you win?
Like
Awesome.
10th or
Send
11th.
an invite.
Huh?
It's
10th.
already.
Oh, okay.
It was VOCC and then I changed the date and then I asked to start practice session.
I know, I have half of mine to start planting some grass. My
My
yard
yard
is,
looks like I'm like, if it warms
I was
up,
gonna
I
start
thought I was
practice
gonna
session,
mow
but
it
if I start
before we
looking
got snow. I was like, we're gonna have to mow this in December. And I was like, this is crazy.
Okay. Yes, I did both.
People were calling me and they're like,
How did you really know how?
because they're laying on their side.
It was.
I was like, no matter. They're like, but they're like laying on their side. I was like, yeah, they're sleeping. They love it. I was like, yeah, I was rolling off the bales and they just like, their head up and look at me and then just go back down in the sun. At our houses, we've got babies and moms, we have 40. We come in spring. We used to be winter cabbage, but my dad quit doing that.
I just sent a one too, just so.
12. But we did that like up until that. We were January, February gathers, and now we're spring.
Can you hear me? Now I hear a sound.
we can hear you.
Okay, you going to chair this for us there, Ron?
Heck no, you got to go out chairing a meeting.
Well, you got all the stuff in front of you.
Oh, you don't have it.
Well, yeah, I do over here on the other side. Is that the McPherson file?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
I think-
007-24.
Say that again?
007-24. ZC0007-24.
That's
Yes, sir.
correct.
Okay, I got it.
Are we ready?
I'm ready.
Pete, you want to go ahead and open the meeting?
Now go ahead.
Okay, it's 1:37 and we're going to open this meeting on file number ZC0007-24, zone change. Anybody have conflicts in the room?
Commissioner Bradshaw has no conflict.
I don't have any conflicts.
Alrighty, I'll get started. Thank you, Commissioners. Alex Fan, Planning Staff. Today we're hearing file ZC 0007-24, a zone change request from Rural 10 to Rural 5. These are the codes of which this application was reviewed against. This is a reconsideration hearing. The board previously made a decision on this file on October 23rd, and we'll go over the reconsideration code. Every applicant or affected person seeking judicial review of the board's final decision must first file with the board a motion for reconsideration of the board's decision, specifying deficiencies in the decision within 14 days of the date of the decision, along with the applicable fee. A failure to seek reconsideration is also a failure to exhaust administrative remedies. The board may consider the reconsideration motion as scheduled on an open business meeting agenda and determine whether to grant or deny the request. If the board grants reconsideration in whole or in part, a hearing before the board will be scheduled to address the specific deficiencies identified by the applicant or affected person and to allow interested persons to have an opportunity to be heard. If the board denies the request for reconsideration, it shall promptly notify the parties in writing. The notice of the public hearing on the reconsideration, identifying the specific deficiencies alleged in the reconsideration request, will be provided as follows. Notice to agencies and political subdivisions at least 15 days prior to the public hearing. The director shall send notice to all political subdivisions providing services with the planning jurisdiction, including school districts and the manager or person in charge of the local public airport. Legal notice at least 15 days prior to the public hearing. The director shall publish a notice of the time and place in the official newspaper or paper of general circulation in the county. And notice will be provided in the same manner as originally provided on the application to members of the public, and it was 300 feet from the property lines. Following the hearing on the reconsideration, the board may affirm, reverse, or modify its prior decision and shall provide a written decision to the applicant and the affected persons within 60 days of receipt of the request for reconsideration. If the board fails to timely decide, the original decision of the board will stand. So on October 23rd, 2024, the Board of County Commissioners held a duly noticed public hearing in which they denied this project in a 2-0 vote. The written decision was given to the applicant and their representative on October 28th, 2024. The appeal period for final decisions by the Board of Commissioners is 14 days from the date of the written decision. This would have ended on November 11th, 2024. However, the county was closed for the observation of Veterans Day on November 12th, 2024. The applicant's representative filed a letter to request reconsideration of the board's decision and paid the appropriate fees. The applicant has met all of the necessary requirements for this reconsideration. The planning department provided public notice to agencies and taxing districts and neighbors within 300 feet of the property line and to the Bonner County Daily Bee on December 16th, 2024, meeting the minimum noticing requirements as set forth in this section. The board is hearing this file within 60 days of the request being filed, and all the requirements of BCRC 12-263 have been met. It should be noted that the board shall render a written decision by Friday, January 10th, 2025, and a failure to render a written decision within this timeframe will result in the original decision of the board to stand. We'll get into the project summary. The applicant is requesting a zone change from Rural 10 to Rural 5 on 3 parcels consisting of approximately 79.445 acres. Project is located off Jenkins Road in Section 15, Township 59 North, Range 1 West, Boise Meridian. Comprehensive plan designation is rural residential, and this request was evaluated against the standards for both Rural 10 and Rural 5. The current uses of the properties are residential and vacant. They are all unplatted parcels. They're approximately 79.445 acres. Currently zoned Rural 10 and have a land use designation of rural residential. And the parcel is accessed from Jenkins Road, a county-owned but privately maintained public right-of-way. The site does contain map slopes of 0 to 30%. You can see in the southeast corner of the southern lot is where most of those slopes come. The site does not contain any mapped wetlands or any frontage to a stream, river, or lake. All of the parcels are located within Special Flood Hazard Area Zone X. The properties are served by individual wells and individual septic systems, served by Northside Fire District, Northern Lights, and Lake Pend Oreille School District number 84. There are 2 types of soil on this property. First type is Mission silt loam, which is considered to be farmland of statewide importance if drained. And I'm going to call this H and X, is considered to be not prime farmland. We received comments from the Lake Pend Oreille School District, Idaho Transportation Department, and Bonner County Road and Bridge. We received no comment replies from Idaho Department of Environmental Quality, Northside Fire, Idaho Department of Fish and Game, Panhandle Health District, Idaho Transportation Department, and Kootenai Pend Oreille Sewer District. All the other agencies that were routed did not reply. A full list of agencies can be found in Annex A of the staff report. And we received no public comments on this file. On the left-hand side of the screen, you can see the current zoning. The subject parcels are in dark blue for Rural 10, and the light blue to the west and to the south is Rural 5. And on the right-hand side of the screen, all of the subject parcels in the area have a comprehensive plan map designation of rural residential. So this is a quick summary of the differences between the 2 zones. Rural 10 is characterized by slopes steeper than 30%, located within critical wildlife habitat, contain prime agricultural soils, served by a network of substandard private or public roads, within the floodway, and contain limited access to public services. In Rural 5, developed at or near the 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres and or does not meet the criteria for R10. We'll get to the Rural 10 analysis. First criteria is characterized by slopes steeper than 30%. The parcels do not appear to be characterized by slopes steeper than 30%. The parcels are relatively flat with few slopes that exceed 30% grade in the southeast corner. Approximately 4.8 acres, which would be approximately 6% of the entire project, contain these steep slopes, most of which are on one of the 3 parcels. The parcel that contains these slopes is approximately 30 acres. These slopes make up approximately 16% of the individual parcel. According to the land use portion of the comprehensive plan for density ranges, properties that are level to moderately sloped are appropriate to be sized between 5 and 10 acres. The next criteria is whether it's located within a critical wildlife habitat. No critical wildlife area was determined by any agencies. Next is contains prime agricultural soils. The parcels contain soils that are considered farmland of statewide importance if drained. Bonner County does not have a drainage district that encompasses these parcels. None of these parcels contain soils that fall under the classification of prime farmland per NRCS and the Bonner County Comprehensive Plan. Areas that are considered prime farmland by the Bonner County Comprehensive Plan are classified as all areas are prime farmland if irrigated, prime farmland if drained, and prime farmland if drained and protected from flooding and not frequently flooded during the growing season. Soils that are classified as farmland of statewide importance are not considered to be prime farmland. Served by a network of public or private roads that do not meet applicable roadway standards set forth in Title II. Access to the parcels is by way of Jenkins Road and Bow and Arrow Road. Both roads are Bonner County owned and privately maintained right-of-ways. The Bonner County Road and Bridge Department commented as to the status of Jenkins Road, but did not comment on the status of Bow and Arrow Road. Road and Bridge's comment should be in your packet today. The next criteria is whether it is within the floodway. The risk of flooding of the parcel is minimal, as it is not within a special flood hazard area. It is within special flood hazard area zone X, and it is not within a mapped floodplain or floodway. It contains limited access to public services. Parcel is not limited in terms of access to public services. Public services that are available to these properties include fire protection, emergency services, and power. Other amenities include a private individual well and septic system. Next is the Rural 5 analysis, developed at or near the one dwelling unit per 5 acres. Within a 1,200-foot radius of the subject properties, there are 26 parcels, 12 undeveloped and 14 developed with dwelling units. 7 parcels are 8 acres or smaller, with 2 of those parcels sized at 5 acres and are developed with single-family dwellings. Of the total, 20 parcels are zoned Rural 5, while the subject properties and 6 others are zoned Rural 10. The next criteria is and/or does not meet the criteria for Rural 10. The parcels do not appear to be characterized by slopes greater than 30%. They are not located within a critical wildlife area, do not contain prime agricultural soils, are accessed by Bonner County owned roads, are not located within the floodway, and do not contain limited access to public services. On September 19th, 2024, the Zoning Commission recommended approval of this file in a 5-0 vote. And again, on October 23rd, the board denied this file in a 2-0 vote. And that concludes my presentation. I can answer any questions if you have any for me.
I don't have any questions.
I don't have any questions. It seems like a good fit to me.
All right. Well, then I will allow the applicant's representative to present on their behalf.
I was like, no. Awesome. Alright. For the record, Tess Vogel with Ruin Yeager. I'm the applicant's representative, Gail McPherson, and as staff put together a really nice staff report and presentation, we are here for the reconsideration as this was denied by the board back on the October 23rd hearing. So, does it want to go down? Alex doesn't want to. Never mind. Gotta be smarter than the computer. There we go. Okay. So Alex already ran through all of this about when the reconsideration was submitted and getting this scheduled. It originally was scheduled for December 19th, but because of some noticing issues, it had to be rescheduled out to today. So we do have until January 10th to get a written decision from the board on this. And as Alex was saying, for the original application, this is a zone change request to go from Rule 10 to Rule 5. And our reconsideration is that we are requesting the review and the reversal of that denial that occurred on October 23rd. And that is pursuant to your Bonner County Revised Code 12-263, or 12-263, and then Idaho Code 67-6535. And because Alex did the background, I won't spend a whole lot of time on this, but it is essentially 79 and a half acres that the applicant is wanting to change from Rule 10 to Rule 5. It's currently served by private septic and individual wells. Possibly we'll have a shared well system in the future, and northern lights. And we are accessed off of the county roads of Jenkins and Bow and Arrow. When we're looking at the standards of review for the zone change when it comes to Rule 10 and Rule 5, you can see that it lines up, the subject properties line up with the Rule 5 zone. The two standards that came into question by the board was the characterization of slopes steeper than 30% and then the containing prime agricultural soils. So those are going to be two standards that we're going to be looking at today, along with some other issues that occurred during that hearing. And we can go back and review any of these, but these are the standards that are not in question by the board. The comprehensive plan land use designation of being rural residential. The properties are not located in any critical wildlife habitat areas. They are not served by roads that don't meet the applicable roadway standards for either public or private roads. They're not within a floodway or even a floodplain. They also don't have any wetlands on site. They don't contain access to limited public services, as staff pointed out. And they are actually adjacent to and within the vicinity of some parcels that are developed at or near the one dwelling per 5 acres. And so this is from the presentation from back in October. We can always go back if either the commissioners would like to review these, but that's just your comprehensive plan map designation. This is showing that there are no critical wildlife habitat areas in this whole section, essentially. And we have our road standards that we went through. We have photos of the actual roadway that serves the property where their access is. Obviously, this was during earlier, not right now in the winter time. That's why there's no snow out there. No floodplains or floodways. The public services aren't an issue, and there's no extensions needed of any of the services. They're already on site. It's compatible with what's already out there and zoned at the R5 level. And now we're going to get into the standards that are in question by the Board of County Commissioners. This is what came up for the denial, essentially, during the October hearing for the standards of the zoning district. We had the characterization of those slopes and then the prime ag soils. And in this, the deficiencies that came out of that is that there were arbitrary and capricious decisions made, and it also wasn't supported by substantial evidence that was on the record. So the first one's going to be the slopes. As Alex showed, there is a section of the property that does have slopes that are steeper than 30%. These are sitting on two ridges that run along that property. And so these are the only areas that have that. The rest of the property is flat. It has cows running on it, and as we all know, cows don't like to go and hang out on the ridges. We have some photos for you of the general topography of the area. So as you're looking out there, they're fields. That's it. So in regards to the property being characterized by slopes that are steeper than 30%, back in October, the Board of County Commissioners stated in their decision for the denial that if the lands have at least one of the characteristics of the R10 zoning, that the request to be changed to R5 must be denied. The commissioners at that time stated, or were told, that in the past it had been consistently approved that characterized isn't just containing. And this was stated by staff, by the planning director, and also by applicant's representative at the time. We have in your code that it specifically uses the term characterized, in the standard regarding slopes greater than 30%. It doesn't state contains. The commissioners have historically interpreted characterized to mean that it is the predominant feature of a property, meaning that a majority, or usually what people see as over 50% of that property includes that feature. In this case, less than 6% of the total acreage includes slopes of 30% or greater. And again, it's just those two ridge lines. The remainder of the parcels are less than 15%. We're not even seeing that show up in the mapping. And so by the Board of County Commissioners in October changing that interpretation of the term characterized, it creates an arbitrary standard. And this is inconsistent with past determinations that Bonner County has done. And also at the October hearing, Planning Director stated that it has been the history of the Board of County Commissioners to state that characterized as the majority of the land being covered in slopes, but it's not to be contained. So with this, the presence of a small area of slopes greater than 30% should have never been a reason for denial, but instead a reason for approval of the zone change due to the subject parcels not being characterized by steep slopes. The use of this standard as a reason for denial was an arbitrary and capricious decision, as the precedent set by former boards in the interpretation of the term, sorry, I wrote it down, characterized as noted by planning staff was not followed. So that was the first issue, is that that interpretation of the word characterized was used that if it just contained it. So if there was a pond on there, the property's not characterized as being all underwater. It just contains water. And that's been the interpretation of past boards up until October. So our next one is contains farmland of statewide importance. And this is if drained. This is the second issue of standards that came up when it comes to the prime ag soils. And as staff noted, no prime ag soils are present on the property. We have the Mission Silt Loam, which is this farmland of statewide importance, and the other is not prime farmland whatsoever as classified. Oh, where's that map? There we go. And then same map that staff showed, the majority of the property is that Mission Silt Loam, and then the other soil is where that ridge line is. So in regards to the prime ag soils, one of the biggest things on here is that there are only 7 soils that are classified as prime farmland soils when irrigated, and less than 6% of slopes per the soil survey of Bonner County. Oh, that's nice. In your comprehensive plan, the county actually outlines about the farmland of statewide importance and how it isn't prime agriculture soils. It distinctly removes it from it, so it should have never been considered that. What else do we have on here? We also don't have a drainage district in this area, so it wouldn't even be considered of statewide importance because we don't have a well-drained district out there. So as the applicant has stated previously in hearings, we're sitting on a bunch of somewhat clay, but mostly sand out there. It doesn't grow anything. Cows are on it, but they're fed. The ground doesn't feed the cows. So with this, excuse me, getting over a chest infection, so I'll be trying to not do that a whole bunch. The soils of the subject site should never have been a reason for denial, but instead reason for approval of the zone change request due to the subject parcels not containing prime agricultural soils. The use of this standard as a reason for denial was an arbitrary and capricious decision, along with an abuse of discretion due to the board knowingly using the presence of a soil classified as farmland of statewide importance as a factor for denial when 1, it's not classified as prime agricultural soil as required for the rural zones. 2, historically past boards have not used soils classified as farmland of statewide importance as a prime agricultural soil, as they are not defined as such. And the Bonner County Comprehensive Plan and planning staff both noted that there is no definition or designation of soils classified as farmland of statewide importance. So again, this should have been a reason for approval, not denial. Now, outside of the standards for the rural district, there were other issues that occurred at the October hearing that also come into play with this reconsideration. 5 of those items are the use of the subject parcels as agricultural lands with standards of the designation of the agriculture forestry zone being used. The zoning commission unanimous recommendation of approval and reasoning not discussed. Decision-making dialogue occurring prior to the close of the public comment period and opening of deliberations. New information being introduced during deliberations and proper procedural rules not being followed during motions. So for the first one, use of the subject parcels as agricultural lands with standards of the designation of the agriculture forestry zone also being used. This was a big one. The requested zone change is from Rule 10 to Rule 5. So thus no mention of the criteria for the agricultural forestry zone should have been included regardless of how the property is being used. Use and zone are completely different. Just because the property is being used in an agricultural manner, that you cannot use the agriculture forestry zone standards to look at this property when it is not zoned as such. The board at that time stated that they didn't want to have land made smaller than 10 acres as it would fragment the farming operations and impact surrounding agricultural operations. And when we were looking at the rural district definitions, it does state that allowing small-scale farming and forestry activities and tourism and recreational uses that can be supported by rural service levels and are compatible with rural character, that is permitted in the rural district. And per state code, small-scale farming does allow down to 5 acres. That's why it's allowed in the Rural 10 and Rural 5 areas. And so it is the agriculture forestry district that does talk about retaining lands for efficient agricultural uses. But again, that never should have even come into play, as this has nothing to do with an agricultural forestry zoned property. So with that, the stated desire to have agricultural lands not subdivided smaller than 10 acres and the use of the agricultural forestry zone criteria should have never been a reason for denial due to the subject parcels not being zoned as agriculture forestry and the rural zone district permitting agricultural pursuits at the 5-acre density. The use of the agriculture forestry zoning criteria and personal desire of the board at the time to restrict parcel sizes where agricultural pursuits occur as a reason for denial was an arbitrary and capricious decision and an abuse of discretion, as the Rural 5 zone allows for small-scale farming operations as noted by planning staff and the Bonner County Revised Code, and the criteria of the agriculture forestry zone are not applicable regardless of the agricultural uses occurring on site. The second one is regarding the zoning commission's unanimous recommendation of approval. With this, that was never even brought up during deliberations for discussion. And if we want to take a look at a court case from 2023, that's the Northwest Neighborhood Association versus the City of Boise. What happened there was that the city did not use in their reasoned statement why they were overturning the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission. This went to court, was appealed at the court level, and it was remanded back because they did not use that. They did not explain why they were reversing it, just as the board at the time did not even discuss the Zoning Commission's recommendation. With this, the exemption of that information regarding the recommendation of approval by the Bonner County Zoning Commission as part of the decision to deny the proposal should not have occurred, as it was part of the substantial evidence on record. The Board of County Commissioners should have discussed the recommendation and provided their reasoned statement why the recommendation was not being used. Due to this action, the Board of County Commissioners made their denial decision not based on substantial evidence in the record as a whole, which supports the approval, actually, of the proposal. This third one is the decision-making dialogue that occurred prior to the close of the public comment period and the opening of deliberations. After the county staff planner had presented his staff report, but before applicant's representative or the public had a chance to speak, the board began deliberations on the file and did not limit themselves to just clarifying questions to staff. Things like, can you explain what the soils are? Where is the ridge line occurring? Actual deliberations occurred during this time, which cannot happen. It was also during this discussion that it seemed as though possible biases were revealed when the discussion of not wanting to break down any ag land smaller than 10 acres occurred. What do we have on here? The board discussion did show those personal concerns over land use in an agricultural manner, and this did go on and play into the actual later deliberation and discussion for the denial of the project. The board beginning deliberations and their analysis of the project out of order of the hearing procedures prior to the applicant's presentation of information and the public's ability to comment caused the decision to deny the proposal to be made upon an unlawful procedure. So that was just one of those issues. Another one that comes up with being made upon an unlawful procedure is that new information was introduced during deliberations that was not in the record. And so what occurred was that the standards of the agriculture forestry district, agricultural uses on surrounding parcels and how the proposed zone change would impact them, and information on parcels adjacent to and within the vicinity of the subject parcels already zoned R5, not being at 5 acres, but only as small as 8 acres in size, were all discussed, but applicant's representative and the public were not able to speak on that because the public hearing portion was never reopened to allow that, which had to occur. The board, using new information to be discussed and used in the decision of denial for the proposal, caused the decision to be made upon an unlawful procedure due to no new information being permitted to be discussed in deliberations without the public hearing being reopened to allow for additional testimony from the applicant and public, which is a violation of rules and procedures found in IDAPA. And lastly, we have proper procedural rules were not followed during the motions being made. And so what occurred was that during the first motion, when Commissioner Corn made the motion to approve the zone change request, during this, Commissioner Williams, without stepping down as chair, seconded the motion to move to discussion, where she asked Commissioner Corn if that was the motion that he meant to make. And Commissioner Corn stated that he wasn't sure. And during the vote, Commissioner Corn voted against the motion, and Commissioner Williams, while never stepping down or stating that she was stepping down as the chair to vote, which is required, voted against the motion as well. The motion and the vote for denial of the proposal was made upon an unlawful procedure, as the first motion and vote occurred while Commissioner Williams was an acting chair. And so that was our last issue on that. Outside of those, as staff stated, we had a few agency comments. Nothing new from the last hearing on it. We have no concerns on those. Road and Bridge provided their information on the roadways. There were 2 public comments that occurred at the October hearing. Susan Glasgow, she also spoke at the Zoning Commission. Her comment is that she was opposed because there needed to be a need for the zone change shown. That was removed, years ago from the county code, and it is not a requirement by state code. So you do not have to show a need for the zone change. You have to show how the property meets the criteria of the proposed zone. So that is what any zoning commission, planning and zoning commission, and board of county commissioners or city council are held to, unless they specifically require that in their own personal code, and the Bonner County Revised Code does not have that. So we have what the review requirements for a zone change are, which is the effects of elements such as noise, light, glare, odors, fumes, vibrations on adjoining properties, the compatibility of the proposal with the adjoining land uses, and the relationship of the proposal to the comprehensive plan. And then we also have state code, which states that it needs to meet the standards of the requested zoning, effects on the delivery of services by any political subdivision providing public services, and whether it's in conflict with the policies of that area's with ours, Bonner County, comprehensive plan. There's no mention of a need for a zone change to be provided in the state or county codes. The other public comment that occurred was from Dave Bowman. He stated he was opposed to the project and stated that if there was no immediate plans for development or subdividing, then the zone change should be denied. It doesn't matter what the need is or what the plans for the property are, unless you're looking at a conditional zone change, which this is not. And so that is not an applicable comment in our opinion, because As long as the property meets the requirements of the zone that they are requesting to go to, that's all that you review against, not the what ifs. Effects on elements on adjoining properties. It's a zone change, no effect on the noise like light, glare, odor, fumes, vibrations. The rezone is not requested to allow for any use that's not permitted within the Rule 10, Rule 5 zones. Same uses allowed in both zones. So you're not going to see, a commercial endeavor that wouldn't have ever been allowed there before if that were to occur here. And if developed in the future with the Rule 5 zoning, there is a potential for a moderate increase in density, which will already just be similar to the properties that are in the area and zoned at the Rule 5 and Rule 10 zone properties. Staff conclusions, every single staff report that we received had the exact same conclusions from them, that this property does not meet the criteria for the Rule 10 zone. The applicant agrees with that. We can show that we meet all the characterizations for the Rule 5. And so in all three of those staff reports, that's for the zoning commission hearing, the October commissioners hearing, and then this reconsideration, planning staff has consistently provided their conclusions that the subject parcels are developed at or near that 1 dwelling per 5 acres and the properties in their vicinity. And they don't meet the criteria of that Rule 10 zoning, thus the subject property should be rezoned to Rule 5. These conclusions were also agreed upon by the Zoning Commission, who provided a unanimous recommendation of approval to the Board of County Commissioners at their September hearing. And the applicant feels that they have provided substantial evidence to the record to support the rezone as well. Any questions for me? And, well, questions. We do want to say that we very much appreciate how hard of a job it is being the commissioners and making these decisions, especially when you don't live in the world of land use. It is not an easy topic. Everything is very different. Nothing is ever the same. And so I as a planner, very much appreciate that. The applicant appreciates that. Mistakes do happen. We're human, and that's why we have processes that we can go through for that. But we very much appreciate the fact that it is a very hard job to go through this. But that completes our presentation. If you have any questions for me.
I do. This is Commissioner Bradshaw. And could you bring up number 1 of your 5 deficiencies there again?
The use of the parse, that one? Or do you want the standard?
Well, that one right there pretty much says it all. I wasn't there for that file, and I don't understand why it was not approved. I think that statement right there in the light blue is 100% correct on this one. And you had a list of, it may be number 2 on there. There it is right there. That sums it up right there. We have rules that we have to follow. It doesn't matter what we think or what we feel. It doesn't matter what the crowd wants or doesn't want. We're bound to follow the rules, and they were not followed in this instance. And I believe that you are 100% correct with what you presented. You did a fine job. And for me, I think it's 100% fit. The ground will have no problem perking for Panhandle Health District. That's all sand out there. That's as good as it gets. I'm familiar with that area. And so for me, I think it's the right thing to do is to go forward with this. I'm done.
Do you have any questions for
I
me,
don't
sir?
have any questions.
Okay,
Thank you.
no problem.
Doesn't look like there's anybody to rebut anything there.
So you're running the meeting, Steve, because we didn't change the chair, so I don't know what the next process is. Public comment or?
Be public comment or if somebody has a rebuttal.
Public comment first. You want to open up for public comment and then open for rebuttal if there's any public comment.
So Steve would like to open it up for public comment right now.
Doesn't look like we have any attendance on
I'm going to go ahead and sit down. Matt Lynn Scott, Bonner County resident for the record. I think Tess did a wonderful job on this, in agreement 100% with it. You know, we're told by Bill Wilson, I really wish he could have been here today, that any kind of decision we make has to be supported by substantial and competent evidence filled with objective criteria. Now, I gone ahead and I sent in a, I don't know, 5 or 6 page comment on this. Were you guys able to read that?
I did not.
Oh, okay. Then I'll go ahead and kind of hit the highlights on this. You know, the denial for the and now the reconsideration appears to rely on a few points of contention. One, the interpretation of characterized by slopes of steeper than 30%, and two, the classification of soils as prime agricultural soils. When we go ahead and look at 12-323, which is our rural district, and it determines with the list of criteria whether a parcel should be zoned for 10s or 5s, it says characterized by slopes that are steeper than 30%. And 2 spots down below that in letter C, it says contain prime agricultural soils. It seemed to me that the decision that the board made back in October confused the term characterized with contain. Yes, there are some slopes on there, but it's not, the property's not characterized by it. It's only approximately 5% of that 80-acre piece as prime soils. We should not be penalizing properties that have minor features that do not define their overall character on the property. As Tess was speaking earlier as well, the past boards have always gone ahead and used that term characterize as a dominant feature. You know, when I walk into a timber stand and I'm walking with the forester for a lumber mill, and we're looking at the cedar patches, and they said, well, this property is approximately 5% defect. Cedar has defect in it up here. But we're still going to buy the land. That 5% defect, they're still buying that log. They're just not going to pay me for that 5%. 5% does not cull the whole thing. When we also, as far as characteristics of slopes, back in 2022, we gone ahead and adopted what's referred to as the geotechnical ordinance. What that says is that if there's parcels that are 30% slopes, you're going to have a geotechnical stamp signed by an Idaho licensed civil or geotechnical engineer with experience to show the geological features of the area and the suitability for intended uses. This is something that the trigger mechanism is if you go in for a building location permit and you want to go ahead and put it on that slope that has 30% slopes, you have to have this. Otherwise, you're not going to go ahead and get your building location permit. That check and balance to go ahead for the public's health and safety is already in place. Tess also touched on the prime ag soils. If in my letter, it's in the record, from the NSSH, which was adopted by U.S. Department of Agriculture. NSSH stands for National Soil Survey Handbook. And if you look at 622.03, farmland classifications on number E, soils of statewide importance are not prime farmland. They are not prime ag in any way, shape, or form. We can go ahead and we can look at our adopted, in our natural resource component, which was adopted in, I believe it was March this year. We can go ahead and look in there and we can see, let me see if I can grab it here. Here it is right here. The list is titled Bonner County Soils Prime Farmland 2022. It lists the soils and the map units on there. Then the next page, it goes ahead and in great detail on the prime farmland soils description, and it lists those map units, and it tells us what map unit design and description that they are. None of the soils on this subject parcel, or actually even in that entire section, there's no soils in there that are prime agricultural soils. I don't understand, at the last meeting, I wasn't here, but I did go back and watch it, why that wasn't picked up on. But that's okay. We have the reconsideration now, and so hopefully that'll be remedied today. And just so, just kind of concluding, I think we have gone ahead and met all that criteria. In November 18th, 2008, when Bonner County adopted 323, and that came up with that language that cannot contain any prime agricultural soils. it was adopted through ordinance 501 on the very same day by the very same Board of County Commissioners adopted ordinance 502. 502 is this map right here, and I'm going to go ahead and bring it up and show it to you. And this is, I'll go ahead and read the recording number because it is a public record. It was adopted ordinance 502 on November 18th, 2008 as instrument number 763211, records of Bonner County. On this map, it shows on the legend prime agricultural soils in RSCS. If we go to the subject section, section 15, Range 1 West, 59 North, Boise Meridian, there is not a single bit of prime ag soils in that entire section. You can see that 2 miles south in section 29, there's prime ag soils, and further south. In section 15, there is not a single bit of prime ag soils. There should be no interpretation on that whatsoever. That's about it. Do you have any questions for me?
Good job, Matt.
Thank you. Steve would like to know if there's any other public comment.
Well,
Hearing none. You have,
board deliberation, I guess.
yep, we're in deliberation.
Doesn't look like there's a big crowd that wants to debate, so
Okay, so Commissioner Bradshaw, Jake is asking that we open it back up for rebuttal.
okay. Is there anybody who would like to rebut?
We, Tessa Vogel for the record, we don't need to rebut, we just appreciate that you accepted to hear the reconsideration and so that we could have this hearing and just go through this, so we just want to state our appreciation on that, thank you. Nope, we don't need to rebut anything that Matt brought up.
Well, pretty gentle crowd there today.
Spicer's not here.
So, so for me, it's a fit. Everything across the street from it is zone 5. The left at the end of that one piece of property, it's all 5s. It's a fit. It's all flat ground, sand. 100% fit for where it's at. And for me, it'd be a go. Not a no, but a yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I have learned more information this time than that I had last time. And I would have to agree that it does seem like it probably should be zone rural 5s. And that would align with the zoning commission. And I do see some slopes greater than 30%, but it really isn't that much in the properties.
No, it's just on that one little corner there.
Right. Knowing that there's not any prime agricultural soils on any of those parcels, there must have been some confusion. I don't recall exactly the last meeting that we had on this, but I think it's pretty clear that there aren't any prime agricultural soils on any of these parcels. You'd probably agree with that, Commissioner Bradshaw?
100%.
Okay, so with that and the information.
So,
I
Jake,
You
real
want me
quick,
to read the motion or you want to do it?
Jake's going to speak real quick.
if you don't mind, Mr. Bradshaw.
We'll let him. We hadn't heard from him much.
I try to stay in the back of the room. Jake Gabel, Planning Director. So the one question I have is, do you agree with the now previous or the previous board's interpretation of what characterized by steep slopes means? So as we stated in the previous hearing, and I think as the project rep stated earlier, that the staff has utilized a board interpretation of characterized by steep slopes being not just a predominant feature, but being essentially more than 50% of the property. So when we look at this project, I think there was a few numbers, different numbers thrown out of, between 10 and 15% of the property being steep slopes of over 30%. That being said, our interpretation and the previous board's interpretation of that zoning requirement of not characterized by steep slopes this would meet that. So more or less, this is me asking the board, do you continue to want to interpret it as more than 50% or as a different interpretation of what steep slopes are? And this is really so that I can continue to advise my staff and they can advise potential applicants the interpretation of that code section. So that's the only thing I'd like you to deliberate on and add to the record for a finding.
Yeah, for me, for something to be characterized as something, it'd have to be 50% or more.
And for me, I would like clarification on that, so that it takes some of the not responsibility, but some of the efforts off of the BOCC as far as interpreting things. I really don't like having to interpret things. I'd rather have it more in black and white. So if we could add or subtract or change a few words in there would be very helpful.
Yeah.
For the commissioners.
Yeah, that'd be a good amendment to look at once this file's done.
So that, not to get too far off topic, but the Planning Commission's working on the update to the land use component. Next on they have a couple things on their docket for up next. First, they're going to look at the goals, policies, and objectives of the implementation component, essentially. And then after that, it's going to be the zoning descriptions. So that's exactly where this came from, is what describes the zones themselves and how they should be, what each zone should look like. And they're aware of a number of issues with our zoning descriptions and how they differ from or are not as specific as they should be. So it's on their docket, and they're the right governing body to craft that and provide you guys with a change. If there's something you want to immediately effectuate a change, you can direct staff to make that change. I would say let's bring it up at the update meeting or something like that. I think we have one tomorrow, so we can discuss it then.
So one issue that I have as a newer commissioner is I don't like the excuse of doing business as usual. I don't like using this is how we've done it in the past, because we get upset at people that come here from out of state saying, well, this is how we do it where I came from. And we always seem to balk at that. And I don't see this as being any different. I don't have any proof that the way the board did it in the past was the right way or the correct way. I'd rather do it the right way or the lawful way. And so if we can clean up that language a little bit to take away that aspect of it, so it's more clear cut, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, simple is always better.
I'm all for simple, but
Me too, because I am.
all right, do we have more deliberation then?
Not for me. I'm pretty good on it. If you'd like, I can read the motion, or you can read the motion, either one.
Okay, I'll have you read it if you don't mind. I would just like to ask Director Jake real quick if that was enough deliberation to cover your portion of what needs to take place.
So any finding we craft has to be like a decision by the board. I think I heard Mr. Bradshaw agree with the previous interpretation, but you had some hesitation on it. So if you guys can come to some consensus on how you interpret characterized by steep slopes, I understand that there might need to be some change to help clarify that, but we're stuck with the code we have right now, and what you're reviewing in front of you is based on the code we have. So if you can make some kind of finding between the two of you of what you consider characterized by, so we can craft a finding to support that, I think it would be beneficial. Okay. And just a reminder that if Mr. Bradshaw makes a motion, he should step down as chair of the meeting. So.
Right.
Okay, so to explain my part of this whole 30% slopes, the prime agricultural soil is off the table, the way I see it, since it doesn't exist. The only thing that is on the table is the greater than 30% slopes. Like I said earlier, I don't like doing business as usual. It may become a legal problem if we change things without changing policy or changing the code. I don't want to create that liability. I'm looking at the picture here. I'm looking at, and on my picture, it's colored red for the greater than 30% slopes. It is a very small portion of the southeastern corner of the lower parcel, it looks like, and it was explained probably a 5 to 10% of the land that contains that 30%. We're not even close to a third or much less a half of what the past boards did. So that being said, I would have to say that that is not characterized as a whole of 30% or greater slope.
I would agree.
All right.
So if you're ready, I'll step down from the chair and make a motion.
Okay.
All right, I move to reverse the previous decision and approve this project, file ZC 0007-24, requesting a zone change from rural 10 to rural 5, finding that it is in accord with the general and specific objectives of Bonner County Comprehensive Plan and Bonner County Revised Code as enumerated in the following conclusions of law. Conclusion 1, the proposal is in accord with the elements of the Bonner County Comprehensive Plan. Conclusion 2, this proposal was reviewed for compliance with Title 12, Bonner County Revised Code, and was found to be in compliance. Conclusion 3, the proposal is in accord with the purpose of the Rural 5 zoning district provided at Chapter 3, Title 12, Bonner County Revised Code. This decision is based upon the evidence submitted up to the time the staff report was prepared, testimony received at this hearing. I further move to adopt the findings of fact as set forth in the staff report and direct planning staff to draft written findings and conclusions to reflect this motion. Have the chairman sign and transmit to all interested parties. This action does not result in a taking of private property. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Roll call vote.
Commissioner Corn,
Yes.
Commissioner Bradshaw,
Yes, ma'am. I will step down from the chair and I move to approve an ordinance of Bonner County, Idaho, the number to be assigned, citing its authority and providing for the amendment of the official zoning map of Bonner County by the classification of lands located in Section 15, Township 59 North, Range 1 West, Boise Meridian, Bonner County, Idaho, to Rural 5, and providing for an effective date. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Corn,
Yes.
Commissioner Bradshaw,
Yes, ma'am. So, if there's not anything else, this will conclude this meeting. Is there another file?
That's it.
That's it. Ms. Vogel, I want to thank you for your presentation. It was excellent. Good to see you again.
Good for you.
Thank everybody that worked hard. Commissioner Corn, thanks.
Thank you.
And now, see, we could be characterized as bald.
We could be characterized in a lot of ways.
As more than half.
I don't know. 100% of my head is actually bald, so I don't know if that's characterization or a fact.
It is what it is, right?
That's it.
So it is 2:33, and I adjourn this meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, commissioners.